1. To build a place is to dwell. The sky is an arched path of creation, the sun and the moon move, and the stars twinkle. The earth is festive, warm and cold, harboring waters and rocks, nourishing fruit, and sheltering plants and animals. The gods are the messengers of divinity who summon all beings, manifested in the flickering of white clouds and the deep blue of the sky, and mortals are mortal. But mortals work day and night, bear hardships, build painstakingly, and achieve spring blossoms and autumn fruits. Finally let the four directions dance together, reintegrate into one thing, and move into the openness of the world. We find ourselves already there, rooted in the world, within the place. Location, zone, road, four directions, world, home, dwelling, presence, etc. Finally make the earth appear as the earth. All things are flourishing and open, claustrophobic and hidden, and each has its own place. Especially when Heidegger talked about place, he linked place with existence, human dwelling, and home, because existence and place are inseparable. The place points to the source and is closely related to the supreme being of nature. It is not the world that constructs the place, but the place constructs the world. It is this causal order that we accept the longness of the earth's gift and the abundance of the present moment. Living and singing freely in the quadruple whole of heaven, earth, God, and man. Of course, this kind of singing is difficult at this time, because singing can no longer attract publicity, but must exist, just like Heidegger used the peasant women's shoes in Van Gogh's painting to carry the land's silent cry. It is not a place where objects can be observed and measured, but what is inspired by a work of art and must face the opening of the world. The eternal source of art is, the image comes to people, and the artificial hand is expected to he becomes a work of art. Image is not a product of the human mind, but a presentation, which is present in the human mind, demanding its dedication and creative vitality. De Martin Buber, Me and You. At the same time, place is not tempted, and also refuses to trade, because what it does is not for self-interest, but comes from the overall and pure traction, which makes the quartet reverberate in the vast world of existence. It is also the place that reconnects the humble scale of human beings with the broken earth, serves as a venue for divinity to manifest itself, and finally becomes the place where people look up to the sky and seek divine revelation. Dwelling is not primarily dwelling, but tending, so that everything is as it is. A kindness and concern reach up to the sky, while the roots remain in place. Places are more amenable to the operation and preservation of truth, and have a kind of openness that penetrates between sky and earth. This between is assigned to man and constitutes the dwelling place of man. This place is the place, which is without foresight, humbly opens to the world of not self, experiences everything with the keenness of first sight, and make the gods appear, and make the dialogue between divine destiny and human destiny shine brightly, and use their duty to guard the growth of salvation, and reawaken and reestablish our insight and trust in the promiser. 2. Place, not far away. The ancient lake, the never-ending forest, and the farm exuding the fragrance of sweet fern and pine cypress are the beautiful lakeside described by White. It's like a dream. Natural history of Selpon exudes a distant atmosphere of pastoral style, which reminds us of our origins and recalls the oldest understanding of natural existence. And the sense of commonality, sense of belonging and local consciousness, as a kind of overcoming forgetting of existence, will always remain in those villages where people and place are deeply connected and deeply rooted. The Arcadia-type natural history represented by White focuses on observation, feeling, and appreciation, seeks the truth in subtle traces, does not aim at hunting novelties, discovering new species, and collecting natural treasures, and examines nature more clearly. Just like fine brushwork, the painting-like description expresses botany and ornithology in literary form. Selpon natural history is the beginning of local writing. Far from being figments of the imagination opposed to the real world, places are systems of thought accumulated and supported by direct, persuasive experience and observation. There are only 2 or 3 stories of human beings, like the larks here, who have been singing the same 5 notes for thousands of years. The basic space of natural interaction. The life is quiet, the owner is elegant, and has scientific interest. There are so many people at leisure, even the most grand event of the surrounding villagers is just going to a nearby town to catch a fare. Time is insignificant, and there will be no significant change in 100 years. They don't care about their past and history, and all the passage of time is just to find a geographical support point and a sense of place. The past, present, and future have lost the meaningful connection, and the eternity of place makes people more inclined to rely on an unchanging thing, and the land under their feet becomes the most definite point in the chaotic universe. It is also because of this that White and his folks really trust this world. White is limited to a profession that cannot travel around. He does not accept trains and telegraphs, and he does not want to worry too much about housework. But only to solve some ornithological details, he is willing to spend 10 years without regret. In the eyes of our modern people, White is a severe procrastinator who lacks willpower and something that can be called enterprise. However, he records his daily life and oral history activities almost every day. The scenery and climate permeate all the texts, allowing readers of later generations to clearly see the color changes of a land and the changes of time. Beauty is truth, and truth is beauty. If you know this, you will understand everything in the world. Cat's Place is beautiful because it is simple and true. The scientific literacy of natural literature writers is reflected in the mastery of local environmental knowledge, but that does not refer to the precision and subtlety of professional scientists, but more basic knowledge than ordinary people, and at the same time, they are willing to devote themselves to sharing knowledge delivered to the reader. At the same time, the author does not overly explore the complex nature and laws behind natural things and phenomena, which also makes Selpan natural history avoid many pitfalls and debates, and is closer to the real natural world. The theme of beauty, elegance, simplicity, and order, and the desire to pursue simplicity, peace of mind, and moral sublimation endow the work with a harmonious and self-sufficient feature. At the same time, it is works such as the natural history of Selpan that can provide us with a bridge connecting modernity and tradition. In this stagnant village or small town, the echoes of the past linger, and the voices of the new age have collided. Extremely cold weather, of course, White and the locals around him didn't pay much attention to these. Although there is no record, the 4 seasons become old by themselves. Changes are from the outside world and the sky, and the world of Serpentine flows in a constant cycle. As Hermann Hesse said, most people seem to be blown down by the wind, fluttering with the wind, falling into the sky. The leaves on the ground are the same. But there are also people who are similar to the stars. They walk on a fixed track, no amount of strong wind can blow them down, they have their own laws and tracks. 3. I can understand the song of birds. In Abby's childhood memories, the wilderness is endless. Under the setting sun, the grassland has a light red halo, like a red crystal, while the mountains and forests in the distance show a dreamy blue color. Both the sky and the earth are still, and people are trapped in a situation where they are powerless to think and hesitate to speak. Yet again, this is a moment when the outer and inner landscapes begin to merge, the moment when intense inner struggle gives way to intense receptivity, when self-absorption gives way to preoccupation with a world that is not me. The place where Abby grew up in his childhood, the mountain of home, the small farm he called Desolate Heath, a small place, is the paradise for Abby and her brothers and sisters. Abby has a younger brother, Howard, who has a strange ability to communicate with trees. There is also a childhood playmate, Johnny, who can start a fire without matches. And Abby is not envious of this, because he is also an expert. He is very good at hearing the sound of pigeons, just as Thoreau claimed to be able to find evidence of life force permeating stones, water, and mountains. The intimate connection with nature since childhood has enabled Abby to perceive the sounds of nature more acutely. Walking alone in the desert and the way home have a roughness and strength that combine acumen and curiosity. The writer's attention to cobras, rattlesnakes, blood-sucking bugs, black widow spiders, mosquitoes, flying ants, and scorpions shows that he understands the meaning of animal sounds better than ordinary people. Human mother tongue is learned and mastered at home, not taught by school teachers. Language is an imitation of the natural world, and human language is also an integral part of nature and communicates with nature. There is an almost instinctive magic here, so that few people can fully grasp its complex and subtle characteristics. The human body is a relatively inferior sensory instrument. We are less able to perceive the life phenomena and rhythms that are prevalent in nature, but whales, butterflies, elephants, eagles, and deer can perceive them accurately. Organisms in nature and their main environment communicate and convey information in their own unique ways. When people approach the grass, the place they pass will inevitably cause intensive reactions. Some birds will suddenly fly back, some animals will scream anxiously, and some insects will speed up their crawling steps under the grass. This signal will be transmitted all the way like ripples. In the forest, many animals know roughly when eagles and tigers will prowl, and when hunters will appear. There is no static place in the whole world, all creatures are watching and listening. 17-year-old Abby started a long, never-ending trip from one place to another, from one feeling to another, the snow-capped Rocky Mountains, the vast skyline in the distance, and there are magnificent and boundless deserts, the banks of the Colorado River with thousands of hectares of gold, and the silent and pure Glen Canyon. The experience of awe often forces the writer's attention away from himself, awakening the fusion of the self and the organic world, and his works also show a high attitude of following the laws of nature. Looking back, Abby said, "We probably all make up our childhood memories. However, they did get lost in the wilderness of their hometown. On that starless night, the mountains and forests forever left their awe and fear at that time, which cannot be imagined." Deeper metaphors about nature force language to exist in plants, water, stones, and animals. It took many years for Abby to realize that she was perceptive and good at listening because she was humble and kept her ears open all the time. He is like sneaking in a dream, deeply in love with the rich light brought by the perception of five senses. Dillard, nature forces the writer to focus more on the outside world and experience more abundantly, and concentration is the soul of spiritual experience. Running has become singing and dancing, and looking has become staring and watching. The autonomous speech of all things begins. As the narrator's existence becomes lighter and lighter, his senses seem to merge into the non-human world, and the self becomes almost translucent. When people enter a state of ecstasy, the vast universe will have a psychic reward. It is a trained sensitivity to nature, a state of joy acquired through long and hard training. The purpose of writing is to evoke memories rather than imitate reality. The fermentation of childhood memories and the recognition of local writing made him restore his nature writing to a richer and sharper form before. The foundation of this kind of literacy is of course wilderness experience, but as Wordsworth identified, no matter how depressing the reality, human nature can still remember. Childhood is the return of adults to nature and places. Most important medium. The innocence, mystery, irrationality and poetic aesthetic characteristics presented by local writing are the result of following the law of artistic return to aesthetic self-discipline. 4. Vastness and subtlety. In the era when Gilbert White lived, there were already emerging bourgeois families who often drew geographical features thousands of miles away into maps, landscape paintings, and prints, and hung them at home as decorations. Those are the images captured by mapmakers following merchant ships, warships, and scientific research ships all over the world. It is a dreamland where people in that era realized their desires and imaginations. They are messages and invitations, connecting passages from places to unknown spaces. Human beings are really just a fragile film on this blue planet, too small to describe. As Thoreau said, most of us have never dived 3 meters underwater or jumped more than 3 feet. Therefore, human beings must place themselves in an appropriate, simple, and humble small coordinate in order to understand themselves more rationally and clearly. As Vico said, it is a characteristic of human nature that when describing unknown or remote things, people do not really understand them, or when they want to explain things that no one else understands, they always use familiar objects, or some analogy of something near at hand. A place can be large or small, as large as the earth, a country, a region, a city, or a village. Of course, it must first be a bi-origin. Some bi-origins are large enough to include 30 million people and span several countries. They may also be small as a forest, a small river, a house, or even ruins and tombs. In Leopold's view, a large oak tree is a historical museum. Owning the tree means owning a reserved seat in the theater of historical evolution. Even, it may be flowing, for example, in a river that is not polluted by modern values, compared with the surrounding environment, under certain ecological standards, it is obviously in another discourse system. As Thoreau said, big and small are relative. Walden Pond is a small ocean, and the Atlantic Ocean is a large Walden Pond. However, it must be a place that is stared at and remembered for a long time. It gives people a place, and only when they are in it can they feel at home. A special place will have a special meaning for a special group of people. People and places get along better and define each other. People are people from a certain place, and places are places for certain people, and even become the memory and experience of this person or a certain ethnic group. Core. The adaptive strategies that emerge naturally are far more complex than any adaptive strategies devised by human intelligence. We still haven't really figured out the key link that determines the world and human beings from inorganic to organic. Ecologist Eugene Odum found that within a few square miles of forest, the information stored in it was more detailed and complex than could be contained in all human libraries. Although this is not the same information sequence, but the code generated by the universe we live in, its history needs to be counted in geological time. According to Odum, in this comprehensive information background, human beings may not be the most advanced or most interesting products. Land is not only soil, but also the field of all life activities. Biologists found an average of 1,356 species of organisms per square foot of inch of forest soil. If you recalculate the populations visible under the microscope, it is likely that the number will increase to 2 billion bacteria and millions of molds, single-celled animals and algae, all of which can be contained in just a few measuring cups in the raised soil. That's why the poet chanted with infinite admiration, "I believe that the meaning of a blade of grass is no less than the daily engineering of the stars." Whitman's Leaves of Grass. Nature is a growing, creative, imperfect structure. It is constantly using its vigorous vitality to create some kind of painstaking creation with no clear purpose. Buddha had envisioned seeking a way of knowing which would demonstrate that nature is moving and alive, while at the same time, in the tight web of its own wholeness, each of its individual parts is the most important. That is to say, in the organic world, although there is nothing that is not connected with the whole, each part can be regarded as a microcosm of the whole system, like a crystal with countless facets. Perhaps we should not focus on scale, let alone seek norms. Place is the greatest common divisor, which itself is the various projections, patterns and experiences, produced by natural light in various locations. Its coherence is internal, ensuring that nothing is too strange or too banal, nor too noble or too base to be contained within its scope. Forests, oceans, deserts, cities, neighborhoods. When the domain of places becomes larger, people will regard the entire earth as our place and themselves as members of the earth. Only in the relationship can one perceive the uniqueness of all things, and only in the unique sense can one have the mind of oneness of all things. Martin Buber, You and Me, this is the local spirit. When a person realizes that he is a small part of a part, the whole is also composed of parts, and each part is a whole, the place will bring people a real and natural state without anxiety. There is such a detail in natural history of Selborne. In White's hometown, there is a gazebo made of oak branches between every two villas. Every year there are some grand festivals in the local area, and special people will come here on their own initiative. Renovation of the gazebo, upon request, all wood felled for the renovation of the gazebo. At the same time, as an added bonus, those who renovate the gazebo can take away the old materials that were replaced. In terms of environmental protection, invisible but powerful village rules and customs are better than social laws, because this model is more in line with ecological principles, and it will independently shape an ecologically sustainable, stable, and self-sustaining life. It is more conducive to the establishment of a truly responsible and intimate relationship between people, and between people and nature. The place has its rather long time scale, and there is plenty of time to coordinate partnerships. It also makes their collective identity more human and resilient. Traditional astrology, agronomy, green farming, crafts, textiles, and metal smelting have created ecological stability, self-sufficiency, self-control, and prosperity. If they are passed on from generation to generation without interference and independent of the tide of modernity, that is the Xanadu, Shangri-La or Arcadia that human beings have longed for generations. So sometimes we wonder whether the scientific tradition and experience derived from the 200 years of Western scientific and technological powers must be horizontally transplanted to those small countries that have nothing to do with the world. Relatively speaking, a social system is just a small human territory, not independent of its surrounding plants, animals, wind, rain, and rivers. And the entire ecological system, including unique vegetation, indigenous people, and culture, free and open river channels, and open views without fences, constitutes a self-sufficient place, which already has its own, faces the natural local spirit. Bull has a meaningful sentence: what really interests Thoreau is not nature itself, nature is just a barrier for something. In his opinion, what nature literature wants to restore may not be people's understanding of the animal and plant world, an interest in itself, but a form of perception. In a larger sense, there is an underlying force that underpins the local natural order, a force that generates and regulates the phenomena of the universe and the nature and characteristics of everything. This power comes from the abstract form of natural order, arranging all things and beings as they are and as they are invisibly. V places the suspension of space. Leopold stared at the short-legged woodcock in the sky for a long time. At this time, it was making a clear and melodious song and performing a wonderful dance at the same time. In his land aesthetic, the grouse is the soul of the northern woods, the blue jay is the soul of the hickory groves, the greyhound is the soul of the peat bogs, and the blue-headed grouse is the soul of the juniper-covered foothills, because they are aesthetic landmark species in the landforms, landscapes and biological communities where they are located. And the white, petite, useless tingly, as long as there is weak sunlight, can scatter small flowers all over the place where there is sandy soil. Those who yearn for spring, but always look up, see such a small thing as a tingly, while those who are frustrated with spring and lower their eyes have already stepped on it, and still don't know it. Sand Country Almanac. The freedom of modern life is based on restricting nature and dividing places. The most fundamental feature of modernity is the separation of space and place. The marriage of aesthetics and capital has given birth to more and more themed scenic spots or tourist attractions. Walking outdoors has become fashionable. Just as the real sense of existence cannot be found in places like Disney, each place has been shaped into a brave new world with empty pretense like the Garden of Eden. Even the consciousness of place can gradually be acquired with the indirect participation of individuals, and all places are facing the crisis of lost sense of place at the same time. In expanding space, using modern information technology, transportation technology, manufacturing technology, space technology, etc. as a means, the decorative scenery is like a substitute filling after being hollowed out of the real, which can maximally let down people's excess emotion and weaken the with people's sense of identity and belonging. In the context of globalization, any effort to maintain the uniqueness and isolation of places seems pale and ridiculous. When human footprints penetrate every inch of the Earth's skin, the sense of familiarity, friendship, and memories of past joys from the place are gradually lost, leaving only tired desires and pursuits. The world is moving towards distance or effectiveness, however, our love and compassion do not extend to our neighbors as much as our way of life. Few were sad when the last American bison left Wisconsin, few knew that pines bloomed, and most of those who knew were too unimaginative to be in such a flowering place. Nothing more than a daily biological function can be seen on a festive day. Shaxiang Almanac. Space contains many characteristics of modern life, while place means the core of a person's memory and experience, such as a familiar park or a city street or even a family, manifested as a tribute to vitality and simple moral concepts. The former is both cold and forward-looking, while the latter is both individual vitality and static. Brown, From Development to Globalization, Post-Colonial Studies and Globalization Theory. Constantly flowing and not staying in any place, people will not be able to experience the true sense of attachment to the place, which confirms a symptom of numbness and scarcity of the times. When the development speed of human creativity exceeds the development speed of human intelligence, the highly organized civilized society creates a dazzling appearance with invincible numbers, but this just means that the meaning of civilization is superfluous and the authentic sense of place is destroyed. The history of the world is the history of the transition from space to place. Space is a huge simplified and commensurate processor, and the core of maintaining this processor is economy. Lefebvre mentioned in the article Reflections on the Politics of Space that space is political and ideological, which means decisive capital and actions, in order to maximize the interests of space expansion, at the cost of destroying the place. Capital has become the measure of all things, the only existence that people worship, the ambition or will of people stimulated by technology, and nature is completely caught in the giant net of global production and consumption, and places are despised or ignored at all of. The technological revolution and crazy international market competition have continued the nightmare of local destruction to this day, and it has intensified. All natural life has been included in the various mechanisms and calculations of capital. Humans have turned 2/3 of the Earth's surface into farmland, and 90% of the plants on the planet are cultivated. Cities are currently the most frequently generated ecosystems, thus creating a new layer of soil, and plastic is becoming a new kind of deposit. From the snowy peaks of the Alps to the jungles of the Amazon River, humans seem to be able to advance in space. The space explored by humans has indeed been in the most barren places on the Earth, such as the ice caps of the Arctic, the rainforests of South America, and the peak of Everest. Even in the near empty space, they have carved their own traces. The behavior of human beings to control and reshape space is intensifying, reducing more and more places to space without place, and has placed itself in such a situation. For the first time in history, human beings have the means and possibility of self-destruction. Compared with the natural economic system, The economic system formulated by human beings is very one-sided. It is also because of this that, once they come close to us, from germs, birds and beasts to earthquakes and tsunamis, in more cases, human beings will only panic and be at a loss. His appearance is so weak and humble. There is always a limit to the success of infinite expansion as a means of accumulating wealth, and when such an expansionary system faces major disasters or even produces bad results, there are only places available for recovery that can survive. The rise of local theory hints at the disintegration of modernism and the return of natural vitality. Places are generated in space, which is a space in which human experience, memory, intention, and desire are poured into, and a space in which specific emotions are poured into. The change of place is no longer completely engulfed in the modernization dominated by scientific and technological rationality and greedy capital. A clear awareness of local cultures leads us to understand the natural world in a new mode that emphasizes ecological change and upheaval. Those who believe that the power of the whole world is greater than the power of local regions will realize that the natural environment is not a stable and firm foundation on which human beings can root, but a driving force for continuous change. We need a more proper science, a deeper understanding of the complexity of nature, a more thorough awareness of its power and stability, before the true turn can really take place, the obsession of nostalgia, to go away from the money, from the railroad that led it to the maze of life. It proudly rejected the factories and the vaults, and was not melted down basely, but returned to the magnanimous mountains, and then the mountains will be closed again. Rilke from Heidegger's What Are Poets For? Western countries such as the United Kingdom and the United States have caused troubles for China on the Taiwan issue, but the Taiwan issue is not controversial. Whether it is international documents or current Taiwan legal documents, it clearly shows that Taiwan belongs to China. Even the United Kingdom, the United States and Japan recognize one China. Encouraging Taiwan's independence is a despicable means. For example, last year when an old woman visited Taiwan, Biden still opposed it on the surface, saying that the Speaker of the House of Representatives and the President have nothing to do with it, which is reasonable in theory. Mongolia is also the homeland of China. Ever since Huo Qubing made the wolf live in Sioux, the Mongolian Plateau and the Central Plains dynasty have been inseparable. In fact, the Northern and Southern dynasties and the new Northern and Yuan dynasties. In the Qing dynasty, it belonged to the central government. Even during the period of the Republic of China, Xu Shenghen also recovered Mongolia. The independence of Mongolia was the result of the Yalta Conference. Although the government of the Republic of China did not recognize it, there was actually no way. Never forget it. Taiwan, peaceful reunification under military rule. The meeting of the heads of 7 Western countries in Hiroshima these days is actually an anti-Russian and anti-China meeting, especially in the territory of the old devils. It is impossible to say anything good about China. But the unavoidable fact is that China's increase in its holdings of U.S. debt by $20.5 billion alienated the Western alliance. France, Germany, and Italy are actually unwilling to offend China. The 3 maritime countries of Britain, the United States and Japan are also not in agreement. The United States and Japan are staunch parties to contain China, and the focus is on Taiwan. Western countries such as the United Kingdom and the United States have caused troubles for China on the Taiwan issue ever since Huo Qubing made the wolf live in Sioux, the Mongolian Plateau and the Central Plains dynasty. In fact, the Northern and Southern dynasties and the new Northern and Yuan dynasties. In the Qing dynasty, it belonged to the central government. Even during the period of the Republic of China, Xu Shenghen also recovered Mongolia. The independence of Mongolia was the result of the Yalta Conference. Although the government of the Republic of China did not recognize it, there was actually no way. Never forget it. Taiwan, peaceful reunification under military rule. The meeting of the heads of 7 Western countries in Hiroshima these days is an anti-Russian and anti-China meeting, especially in the territory of the old devils. It is impossible to say anything good about China. But the unavoidable fact is that China's increase in its holdings of U.S. debt by $20.5 billion has alienated the Western alliance. France, Germany, and Italy are actually unwilling to offend China. The 3 maritime countries of Britain, the United States and Japan are also not in agreement. The United States and Japan are staunch parties to contain China, and the focus is on Taiwan. China has already made preparations for military reunification, but the determination of the United States is actually open to question. With 10 days left to face debt default, Biden has given up on the four-party Indo-Pacific talks, and hastened to return to China. It has already been seen that the United States has more internal worries than foreign ones. As a typical capitalist country, the United States has nothing that cannot be bought and sold. Most of the territories of the United States are bought from France, Mexico, and Russia, and Taiwan is not impossible to sell. When the United States feels that it has no certainty of victory over China, it will inevitably sell Taiwan. With the virtues of the United States, it will not only sell Taiwan, but it is very likely to sell Japan and South Korea at the same time. So for Taiwan, U.S. Security Affairs Assistant Sullivan proposed to sell $1 trillion to China. Make up for it from Japan. Mongolia, unification under close cooperation. China and the 5 Central Asian countries held the first summit. When the beautiful women in Tang Purong Garden appeared in Tang suits and led the heads of state, the grand scene 1,300 years was reproduced. In fact, at that time they are a family, and they are all within the scope of Angsi Tuhufu, fighting Tuhufu. The opening of Vladivostok reminds us of the Anton Protectorate, and in the north there is the Anbei Protectorate. Tunuwilyanghai part belongs to the Russian Republic of Tuva, which is Outer Mongolia. The convening of the China Central Asia Summit and the opening of Vladivostok are the consequences of the Russo-Ukrainian War, which has not yet ended and is likely to intensify. China's support for Russia will be crucial. Of course, we understand that our lips are cold and our teeth are cold. We cannot make territorial claims to the Northeast and Far East at this time. That will push Russia to the west. In order to provide better assistance, we must open up from Manchuria, Aranyat, and even the passages along the Altai Mountains. If Russia can abandon Mongolia, as a country with a population of 3 million, is unable to refuse various offers from China. The gap between the rich and the poor is large, and there is still hope for a large number of Mongolians to flow into Inner Mongolia. Inner Mongolians will go to Outer Mongolia to mine and herd and drive the development of Outer Mongolia, which will inevitably form a huge hinterland support for Russia. Outer Mongolia has also achieved substantive unification. Of course, for the sake of friendly relations with Russia and international influence, expectations such as the establishment of an autonomous zone in Mongolia cannot be achieved. It should be a hidden unification. Some people say that the big star of China's 5-star red flag is mainland China, and the 4 smaller stars are Hong Kong, Macau, Taiwan, and Mongolia. Although it is not the original intention of the 5-star red flag, it makes sense. The territory of the Qing dynasty is quite reasonable.